The State Administrative Office of the Courts has identified a big problem for the SF Superior Court, which is the backlog of misdemeanor cases and the difficulty that the court's having in resolving those cases. Do you have any opinion about what needs to be done to reduce that backlog and, as you say, move those cases more quickly?
Yes, I think it starts with the district attorney and the kind of cases that are being charged. And I think you need to, as a judge, I don't think any single judge can do this, but the judges as a body need to come up with what they think is appropriate public policy and sit down with the district attorney to talk about how we're going to handle cases. I personally do not think that we should be spending as much time as we do on small drug cases where you see police officers sitting around earning a great amount of overtime, and district attorneys taking a lot of their time for a preliminary hearing involving 1 rock of cocaine or a small amount of marijuana, particularly when there are cases, for example, involving fraud in the mortgage industry right now. Homeowners who are not English speaking, who are being defrauded by the hundreds, and they're not being investigated and they're not being prosecuted. We need to decide as a city what our priorities are going to be, and the best way to reduce the backlog is to figure out what cases we're going to prioritize and what cases we can put into other kinds of dispute resolution systems.
So the idea is that judges could lean on the DA a little bit and say, you need to push some of these cases to diversion or something like that. I'm just trying to get a sense from you what the judges can really do about the DA's charging policy.
Well, I would never use the word lean, of course, on the DA, but I think that the DA has to understand that the court has limited resources, is going to devote a majority of them to the kind of violent felonies that concern most citizens, and other kinds of cases are going to be handled in a very efficient manner. There are not going to be continuances granted in the way you might have in a more serious case. The courts are going to find other ways to fast track these systems. Generally speaking, the misdemeanor courts have not been, I think, misdemeanor calendars have not been administered in the afternoons, and so having a court where all these cases go and having a calendar that goes from 8 a.m. straight to 5. You don't want to put, for example, one judge in there and leave them in there forever, but you can rotate judges where you have a court that hears nothing but these cases and very, very quickly expedites their adjudication. I don't know exactly how it could be done, but obviously intelligent people can get together and figure out how to settle these cases in a couple of days.
Isn't Kamala Harris already fairly progressive as district attorneys go? I mean, you're feeling like she's focusing a little bit too much on these small drug possession cases?
I think when you say the word progressive, that implies a set of values that I don't think is really my point. We're talking about administration, and everyone can become a better administrator. She has not only a very large bureaucracy that can always be administered better, no matter how much I support her. Also, she does not have control over the police department, which is an entire other kind of bureaucracy that I think needs much better administration when it comes to small drug cases. And so what I'm telling you is that I'm not going to take the bench and focus on how we better administrate, let's say, something like the juvenile court. I've not had any juvenile cases, but I do have very definite ideas about how we can speed up the process in the criminal court without infringing on anybody's procedural rights, so that we can focus more on the cases that you hear a lot of complaints about. All the, for example, the robberies that don't get investigated that have been very well reported and things like that.
Should DAs worry that you'd be partial to the public defender side?
No, the public defender will tell you that most of the ex-public defenders who became judges were not particularly partial towards the public defenders.
They say that a lot.
They say that a lot. But I've had to wear different hats since being a public defender. Most notably, I think when I was a public defender, it's obvious that they do not have a very close relationship, very affectionate relationship, if you will, with the police department. But since I became a member of the Board of Supervisors, I have been consistent in fighting for more police in my district. And I often find my ex-colleagues questioning me about that. I have been a very strong advocate for police foot patrols, which finally did pass as a law at City Hall. And I want more police, and that's not a view that's a typical one for a public defender. I've been a supervisor longer than I was a public defender. I was a public defender for about 5 years. I was a supervisor for almost 8, and I realized that violence holds communities like mine pretty much hostage.
It looks as though you chose to run against